Welcome back to another fun, exciting episode of Seriously Caffeinated. My name is John Rogers, and I have right here my handy-dandy Sirius AI cup, which I am drinking caffeinated coffee out of. And joining us is not only a familiar face, but also our co-host of our first season, Sean Themea. Just kidding, I know it's pronounced Tima. Sean, what are you drinking today?
First of all, you almost gave me a heart attack. Second of all, I'm drinking the finest decaf out of my Bitcoin mug because I've cut down to one single cup of caffeinated a day, and that is just what happens when you get old.
Oh man, 2022 versions of ourselves would be so upset that we would become so mature and so responsible with our caffeine intake. I am also cutting down, but got to do it for the authenticity of this series. So,
yeah, you going from 2 pots to 1?
Well, I'm not teaching high school right now, so correct. Yes, that is how I am maneuvering in this life of needing to keep up my energy while I get older and wrinklier and not as energized. But here we are. So anyway, we are now on season 2 of Seriously Caffeinated, and Sean, you were our co-host for season 1, where we talked a lot about the creative process of creating Sirius AI, a post-apocalyptic musical. And season 2 is all about discussing the world that we live in now, because when Sirius AI first became a thing, we started making this project in 2017 when artificial intelligence was still this kind of like science fiction kind of idea. You had a lot of movies coming out about what if, and like kind of discussing ideas of can robots have souls and things like that. But it was a very big kind of thought process about artificial intelligence. But now we are living in a world where AI is not only among us, but we are dealing with the smaller things, like the more immediate kind of issues, will AI replace us? Is AI something that is morally right to use or wrong to use, or you can also think about it as ways to save resources and everything like that. So I want to start off hot by asking you, what is your opinion on artificial intelligence?
Well, I think the answer to that question depends on who you are. Now, as a 31-year-old guy running a company, about to be 32, I think it's great because it's allowing my company to get more things done faster and putting people on higher value projects. For example, back when I was leading a department on the team, we spent hours and hours and hours, of manpower doing research on prospective investors. Now, instead of hours and hours and hours being spent on researching those people, AI can do it, a human operating AI can do it much faster, in 96% shorter time, so that the people on the team who would have been doing research can be doing things only humans can do, such as making phone calls and reaching out to those investors. So it's allowing us to save time to do more things. So from that perspective, I think it's great. I also see AI as a bull, right? AI is a bull. Imagine a bull in a bullfighting ring, right? Now, you can either learn how to become the matador and ride the bull and ultimately, be the master of the bull, or you can get trampled by the bull. You can stand there and point at the bull and say, this bull is bad, and the bull is just going to run you over. So from that perspective, I think that, as a 31-year-old dude, I need to learn how to be on top of AI so that I don't get trampled by it and I can use it to create value for those around me. Now, as someone who also is thinking about becoming a parent soon, right? If you ask me, how do you feel about AI as a parent? My answer is different from when I'm wearing the hat as the company head. I put on the hat of, it's making our kids dumber and we should keep them away from it, right? And I feel that way about social media too, and going down the line, video games at large, TV, right? The more that tech gets integrated into our lives, I think we become a little bit less human. Or to be more specific, we lose the chance to flex the muscles that are uniquely human to us, because we're trading that off to say, no, I'm just going to indulge and consume with this tech rather than learn how to be self-sufficient as I'm growing and developing, right? So I see the good in it from a business perspective and as a fully developed brain, right? Who's like, hey, my goal is to make the world a better place through this company. How am I going to do that with every resource possible? AI is great. If you're asking me, hey, how does it affect the children, right? Then I would say, hey, the kid who doesn't use AI is probably going to be smarter and better off than the kid who relies on AI as their brain is developing. And I'd say the same again about cell phones, social media, video games, etc. So that's how I stand on the issue.
Well, awesome. Yeah, I mean, one of the coolest things about this season 2 series is that every single person I've been talking to has, everyone has an opinion on AI, and it's funny because, I don't think I've talked to two people with the same opinion on it so far, and it's such a nuanced subject too, and one of the things that Sirius AI Post-Apocalyptic Musical does is we are really trying to, and this is speaking more to your second point than your first one. We'll get to the first your first premise as company head in a moment. However, the idea of kids growing up with AI is becoming so prevalent. I mean, I can't say all teenagers are like this, but it's kind of the notorious stereotype that teenagers in school, may not have a lot of friends, or maybe they have a lot of social anxiety. One of the things that I feel like society, at least American society, kind of focused on in the 2010s was mental health. And mental health is, I don't feel like it was ever resolved. Like, we talked a lot about anxiety, we talked a lot about depression, but I don't think we ever actually got to an answer on any of those things. And now, ever since COVID kind of washed away, like, now the big thing is artificial intelligence. So, to your point, not just about kids being smart and knowing how to exist without the AI, I feel like a lot of kids are also growing up with this whole question of, well, is AI better than humans? So let me, and I kind of want to put you further on the spot because you have two very contradictory, opinions, which is fine. Those kind of opinions are to be expected because it's all up to perspective. That was me quoting you, quoting me. Anyway, yes. So do you think artificial intelligence is better than humanity?
Better at what?
Let's say you had to take one with you on a, if you had to get rid of humanity or you had to get rid of AI, which one would you rather get rid of? Doesn't affect you.
I think you get rid of AI because humans have done pretty good up to this point and created a lot of flourishing, the most flourishing and prosperity in recorded human history in the last 100 years, right? So if you had to make that trade-off, I say you go with humans because the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. And on the whole, right, we're still here, right? We're still here. We've increased the quality of life across the world, right? We've almost eradicated poverty compared to what it's been 100 years ago in terms of median wages, in terms of just daily quality of life, right? We are on the up and up, and AI can help us get there faster, I think, if we are using it appropriately and not becoming too dependent on it. So at the end of the day, this is all to say, there's plenty of stuff you could rag on about the human race, but on balance, it's an upward slope, right? We're getting better each and every year. So if you said humans versus AI, gotta pick humans.
Yeah, and well, I do feel like, that's the opinion that many human beings have on it because, we are humans. And it's funny because, I'd kind of like to do one of these interviews with an AI model to see what it has to say on these things. I'm sure that a lot of AI models are programmed to, put humanity above itself. But there could be a day where, we actually get true, genuine, uninhibited artificial intelligent models who can want to protect themselves. And so going back to the you'd want to preserve humanity, which, I think most people would agree with,
If nothing else, out of preservation.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny too, because your reasoning for that is far different from, from one of the Comic Cons that we've gone to and, interact with a bunch of artists. There's a lot of hostility towards artificial intelligence. And, it's one of those things where it really depends on the person. For someone who's trying to, make their company work as efficiently as possible, that is, it makes sense that you'd want to use AI to be able to make that more efficient. For someone whose livelihood depends on, being able to draw images, and people keep using AI programs to do that instead of, bringing on the humans, I can also see why there is that animosity towards the AI. When we were going around trying to sell Sirius AI and talk to people about it, we had to put a badge on our literature saying human made, because I had a lot of people look me in the eye and tell me, oh, good, I'm glad you said that, because I was about to rip this up in front of you. There's a lot of hostility towards AI, especially from the artist world. However, they are not people who work in management and, in number building. And artificial intelligence is definitely good at that. But I wanna dig into one of my first actual written questions I have for you. So you said that you would, prefer to, choose humanity over AI. But what aspects of human experience should we prioritize preserving or celebrating? Because, and I want to dig deeper into what makes humanity so special, and, try to take the you out of it.
Yeah, well, it's not to answer the first part of your question. The things that we must preserve in humanity, if nothing else, again, to increase our own quality of life and our own happiness and our own grasp on reality, are the experiences that we have off the screens, right? There's a great book that I read a couple years ago, which did a overview of Gen Z. And it was not The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, although that's a very similar book. It was a different book, of which the name I can't remember. If you'll indulge me later, I'll Google it and I'll bring it up. But it had a chart that measured the raw dopamine levels from certain activities. And things like going outside, running outside, reading a book, talking with friends, they all had positive impacts on dopamine. Your dopamine levels rose from that, right? All activities that pertain to screens, watching TV, scrolling on social media, etc., all correlated with a depletion of dopamine, right? Your happiness and your enjoyment levels going down, right? And so you talked about mental health and anxiety and everything. And I really do think it is as simple as correlating that to, yeah, people are looking at screens more, and biochemically, that's bad, right? I'm not a scientist or psychologist or whatever, but anecdotally and from that little chart alone, pretty easy to figure that out. So you're talking about, what makes humans human, what makes humans special.
What should we prioritize preserving and celebrating about humanity, especially as AI is becoming more efficient at things. You had said that, in the workplace you would, definitely prioritize AI over humans because it's more efficient and it does a lot more without wasting resources. But is there anything about humans that, that is so important that we can't risk that kind of resource what's the word I'm looking for? Resource preservation.
Right. Well, I would challenge how you frame that, because I never said prioritize AI over humans. I said humans must use AI to do more good in the world, right? If at the end of the day, if your mission, say, is, hey, we need to feed the homeless, and someone came along and said, hey, if you use this LLM, you'll be able to work faster so you can feed the homeless more. I think it is irresponsible and unethical to say, no, I'm not going to use AI to do that. Really? Because more homeless people just didn't get fed because of your, moral principles, right? You need to use the resources at hand to make the world a better place. The state that AI is in currently cannot operate and cannot work if humans are not engineering it and mastering it. And I think it's a fair question to ask. Okay, well, what about 5 years from now? What if the AIs are so smart that they don't need the humans to operate it? And I'll say, well, that's the devil we don't know. But we can't say, no, we're not going to help the less fortunate and increase the quality of life for people who need it and stop evil because AI bad. That's just irresponsible, right?
Yeah.
And if you can use that at the workplace, and if you work in a mission-driven place like me, where we help people, we increase quality of life, and make people safer and freer, and if we're going to use AI to do that, then we're going to do that as long as it's run by a human. Back to your original question, though, is what aspects of humanity do we need to preserve? Well, I think that we need to not lose touch with the living. We need to not lose touch with life around us. And what I mean by that goes back to what I said earlier. Talk about being outside, right? When you're outside, you're surrounded by trees. You're surrounded by grass. You're surrounded by animals, right? This is a reminder of, hey, these things are alive, right? These things breathe. These things live. You're feeling more connected to Earth's beauty, and God's wonder around you, right? Because he created all of this. And I think that that's something on a spiritual level that AI and technology cannot provide, right? It can simulate it, but it cannot provide it in its rawest form. And I think that the more we are detached from reality, the more that evil is likely to foment, right? It's when people develop these alternative realities. I mean, you see, the latest round of mass shootings, school shootings. I mean, these people were all radicalized by spending all their time on internet forums. You could say, well, those are living people who are in there chatting on the forums. Yes, but you're living in a reality that's detached from the living, breathing, physical world around you, right? You think about political discord. You can be, the evilest person in the world to someone on the internet based on posting your political views there. And conversely, other people can be absolute pieces of garbage on the as you see them as well, right? You may see that, you may feel animosity, you may think this person is terrible. 96% of the time, you meet that person in real life, you have a real conversation with them, and you realize, oh, this person actually isn't so bad. They're not actually the spawn of Satan. Now, there is a 4% of the time where these people are actually motivated by evil and by terrible things, and we shouldn't lose sight that there is real evil in the world. But this is all to say, we need to be in touch and grounded in reality. We need to literally touch grass if we are to experience our humanity in full. And AI may be able to generate really good-looking grass, but that does not make us as human as getting out there and being among the living.
Good answer. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely everything that you had said. I don't disagree with. I'm thinking about past technological advances where it would have been irresponsible of us. Water conservation or something that is able to bring water to places on this planet that aren't fortunate enough to have a safe supply of that. If we had just ignored the technology that would allow that to happen, I would agree that using technology to an extent is irresponsible. Or sorry, not using technology to an extent is irresponsible. And AI, I mean, a lot of people have tried to identify what is it exactly, are we in danger of it replacing us? And meanwhile, there are a lot of businesses and companies and individuals who have used it to, really do the unthinkable, which is, make things more efficient and better for the human race. Now, I kind of want to talk about your second thing that you had mentioned, which is talking about it as looking at it from a parent's perspective. Now, as you know, I am a school teacher, so I've worked with a lot of kids, and what I can say right now is that one of the things that I see is that kids, it's almost like this drug that's coming through schools. It's like you can't use it, you don't bring it to school. If you do, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. But because we set these boundaries so much, kids are trying to, kids are going to be using it at home, and they're going to try and get away with submitting essays using AI. And it's pretty easy for me to catch them. You just had to ask them what certain words mean, and that's the big thing, is that when a human is unable to comprehend what the AI is doing for them, I think that's when we run into a lot of issues. Because just like a calculator, back in school, like, I'm not sure, you were a pretty good straight A student. But for me, I always ask the question of, do I really need to learn these things? Is this really going to help me as an adult? Why do I have to learn how to do long division when I just have a calculator? And the teacher always would say, well, you might not always have a calculator. You need to know how to do this. And I'll admit that, I'm not the best math person. And I usually just trust what the calculator tells me. I do not have the ability to question a calculator unless it's more like simplified math. So anyway, back to the artificial intelligence, the flip side to that is, kids, don't use AI in school, like, ever. Like, you are here to learn how to be a good human. But what's infuriating for kids, I'm sure, is that teachers, on the other hand, are encouraged for the same reasons that you had said, which is, efficiency, saving time and resources. Schools actually encourage teachers to use AI to, like, help lesson plan. That way that they're freed up so that they can go to more very important meetings that we have to have during our
professional development workshops. Yeah.
Professional development workshops. Yeah, exactly. So, I think there's a hypocrisy because, as a teacher, I'm instructed to have my phone out at all times in case the principal needs me, and also to use AI to make my lesson plans. But if I see a phone in the hands of a child, not only is AI not allowed, but a lot of schools are moving to ban cell phones entirely, which I have mixed opinions on. I think what it all comes down to is, though, that kids are growing up without learning, why are we doing this? Why are we not supposed to be using these phones if I see all these adults using phones? And it's almost like a license almost. Except, adults don't get licensed. We're just not prohibited from using it. So all this being said, and let me get to my point, is AI is something that kids are growing up with, and, they're using at home, and they're using it to a huge extent at home. A lot of kids who are dealing with, loneliness and mental health problems, and, even suicidal thoughts. I don't know how true this is, but I read that, a kid in California had committed suicide because the AI chatbot, helped him get to a logical conclusion that, yep, that's the right thing to do. So all this being said is part of the reason that we're coming up with, that we feel so strongly about getting Sirius AI picked up, is because we want to have conversations with kids, not about how great AI is or we want to talk about what makes humanity important and why should kids be proud to be a human being, rather than, and also to acknowledge why is AI something that is treated the way it is. So, what would you say to your kid who wants you to explain AI to them in that regard?
Can you be more specific? Because there's 5 different things I could talk about. What's
Sure.
the question?
Sure. Yeah. The question is, your kid goes to school and says, Dad, why can't we use AI in schools? What do you tell them?
I would say you can't use AI in schools because it will make you stupid. And then I'll elaborate and say, this is how science works, right? Or this is how God designed us. Your brain stops developing when you're 25. Until then, it grows a little bit each and every day. And every moment that you spend not doing drugs or not, doing AI, using technology to make your life easier, every moment you spend actually flexing your brain muscle and using your brain and training your brain to be as efficient as possible while it's developing, that will make you more self-sufficient, more independent, smarter, and capable of doing great things for the rest of your life. If you are, what's the term I'm looking for? There's a word I'm looking for about making your life easier and being it will make you smarter. This is a critical point in your life. Now, worst case scenario, the world falls apart and everyone's going to have to rely on their own wits and their own skill to try and preserve themselves and try and, provide for themselves. You're going to want to have a strong brain to do that. Also, you're going to want to live up to your own full potential. And, everyone has their own innate X factor. Everyone has the thing that they are the best at, right? And you need a strong brain and you need strong wherewithal to be able to live out that full potential that you have and use your X factor. So the more that you're taking shortcuts, right, and the more that you're not flexing your muscles, the weaker you will be over the long term. So this is a long way of saying, I would frame, why can't you use AI in schools? The teachers are using it because, well, their brains are developed. They're not going to get any smarter. By not using AI in school, you will be smarter and more self-sufficient and able to provide for your own family in the long run. And if they're like, Dad, that's too macro. Why can't, I do that? That's dumb. I'd say, well, because I said so. And appeal to authority. And that's how I'd answer the question.
Excellent. Well, now I'm going to switch it over to, let's talk about Sirius AI for a moment. So, you've been supporting Sirius AI for a long time now. I think you came on to our team in 2020. So you've been seeing it grow, and you've also seen AI grow along beside it. We've talked about this off camera many times about, how this is a conversation that kids need to have. And so First, tell me about, what was your perspective on Sirius AI, a post-apocalyptic musical, when you first came on, and how has your opinion on it changed? And could it be used to help you in that conversation that you just had with your kid?
Yeah. So when I first came on to be a part of the Sirius AI team, it was very early stages. We were looking at a script of what was going to be a stage musical, right? And then that evolved into, hey, actually, this is going to be a cartoon, in part because, of COVID, but also in part because we wanted to make the story bigger, right? So I remember coming on the team and seeing sketches, very, just early stage sketches of, yep, this is what it could look like if we made it into a cartoon. The question is, how the heck do we make a cartoon, right? And to your credit, and the credit of the people who are actually doing, the illustration, it really is a zero to hero story. It's a started from nothing. Look what we've done, right? It's not like anyone on the team went to school, full time to be like, yep, I'm going to be an animator. Then worked at an animation firm for 10 years and then said, all right, time to now make a product, right? These are people who said, we've got a story we want to tell and we are going to figure out how to get there. And frankly, we got there without using AI, right? It's not just that the story... it's not just that the story itself talks about, a critical issue, but the actual illustration is human made. But the process of how to physically make a cartoon all came from humans finding that solution, seeing raw Disney magic. And I think that's pretty cool.
But, that actually brings up a really good question that this is actually a really good thought experiment. I've brought up with the team a few times. Not about the actual cartooning stuff, more like, social media work, but do you think we would lose something special if we did start incorporating AI into our production routines? Everything that we're doing is about the topic of it. Wouldn't it make sense to maybe have AI write the dialogue for our AI characters to get more authentic AI dialogue? Do you think that, or do you think we should keep it completely 100% human?
Well, you're in too deep now with the whole human-made thing, aren't you? So there's no going back. Now, maybe for future cartoons, sure, go for it. If that means that that's more time for you to go and say, all right, because that's being handled, I have 10 extra hours. Good, I can spend those 10 extra hours trying to get this thing on Netflix and ultimately do more good from this cartoon being out, right? As long as it's not compromising quality. But no, I don't think there's any going back for Sirius AI, and I think that's why it's going to stand apart from other new pieces of animation in the space. So, as Max Bialystock said, I'll let you know we're in too deep. And guess what, John? You're in too deep.
Fantastic. Yeah. Do you think that, if Sirius AI became a big Netflix hit in the next 5 years and your kid was, 3 years old at the time, maybe 3 is too young, but Okay, 10 years, and your kid is like 8 years old. Would you use would you use Sirius AI to have these conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would use Sirius AI to have these conversations because I'm a big musical guy and I do love that golden age Disney style animation. So I think what makes Sirius AI effective is, you know, the property alone is enjoyable to watch, right? And then throughout the show, you have these conversations that are implied or get the character, or rather the viewer, to think themselves about, like, oh wow, like now I'm questioning these things, I'm coming up with these big thoughts, right, as opposed to it being, really hitting you over the head. And I think that's what makes art effective, is when it can incept ideas into the viewer's mind or suggest questions without being so pedantic and so hit you in the head with, hey, this is the message, right? That turns folks off. And I think Sirius AI threads that needle very well.
Oh yeah, it's the English major in me. I like to make sure that you have to do some work to figure out what the heck we're talking about, and that makes us smarter. That's something that makes us human. All right, a hypothetical question. Okay. Actually, no, I want to save that for the end. Let me ask you this next one. This is our last of the written questions. As someone who has supported the project and believes in its potential, what do you hope to see? Where do you hope to see Sirius AI in the future? And who do you want to see it? You might have kind of answered that in the last one, but...
Yes, I want to see it on Netflix. I want to see it on Hulu. I want to see it on Amazon Prime. I want to see it adapted into a feature-length film. And I want the same people to watch it who watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is kids, but also young adults, both of whom can take away big takeaways from it.
That was short, sweet, and to the point. I love it. All right, then I want to wrap up our episode today with asking this question that, I'm hoping will stump you a little bit, because you seem very... persuaded of your opinions on artificial intelligence. You've told us about where you stand from a company perspective, where you stand on from, a human relationship perspective. But let's talk about what is artificial intelligence. So it's no doubt, it's no surprise that our first episode, is kind of loosely based off of Pinocchio. And Pinocchio, as we all know, is a little wooden boy who was brought to life by a fairy, and by the end of the movie, or end of the book, or end of the play, whichever way you're experiencing Pinocchio, the fairy turns him with magic into a real boy. Now, let's switch it to Sirius. You have this artificially intelligent robot who is looking at you, and with all the conviction in the world says, I am real, and I am human, and I feel things just like you. Is he telling you the truth, or is it all just an elaborate hoax?
Well, I can't speak to the AI's heart of hearts to know whether it thinks it's lying or it thinks it's telling the truth. But AI is not human because it was not created by God. And if you're an atheist, it was not created by organic science. It is man-made. AI is the extraction of information from humanity. And hopefully that mass extraction of information will continue to be built into ways that help humanity advance, right? But it is not human because it does not come from God or the Big Bang. It is man-made. End of story.
I think I've heard you say God in this last half an hour more than I've ever heard you say God. However, let me bring this into light. What if do you think that AI is some sort of offspring of humanity? Like, could you reasonably look at artificial intelligence? We've already covered that it comes from us. It's copying us. Doesn't a child copy its parent to learn how to exist in this world? And is there a world in which artificial intelligence can be considered, humanity's offspring, and therefore it is something that tries to emulate us? Or do you still look at it as, that's not accurate?
It is the most advanced and intelligent human-made product, right? Because a tractor Is that the offspring of humanity? No, of course not. Well, why not? Well, AI might be. Why? Because AI emulates humans. Okay, well, it's still made by a human, right? So the property of the product is that it can emulate us. The property of a tractor is that it picks up barrels of hay, or bales of hay, rather, and plows the field, right? It's doing its function. The function of AI just so happens to be capable of emulating humans. But AI is not the offspring because a tractor is not an offspring. Now, I think your next guest should make the argument to why a tractor is the offspring of humans, in which case maybe he can beat my argument. Or she.
Or they.
Or they. It's a big, bright world out there. Let me just add this in real quick, right? Because it hit me, and I wanted to make sure I got it in. You asked what I'd say as a parent, right? If I was talking to my kid. I would remind them about the true message of the Dead Poets Society and remind them that Robin Williams' character is actually the villain, right? Now, what am I talking about? What am I talking about, right? Long story short is you could interpret the Dead Poets Society as a bunch of people saying, children, you are in preparatory school. This is your chance to learn the building blocks of how to succeed in this world. And we all need these building blocks. And when you stand atop these building blocks, then you can dance and groove and do whatever you want because you have a good foundation that puts you at the top of the mountain. And when you get to the top of the mountain, then you can decide to dance around. And Robin Williams' character said, let's just dance around without the building blocks. And life just doesn't work like that because you're going to look up from your big dance party and everyone's going to be on these building blocks looking down on you like Seymour Skinner saying, pathetic, right? AI is Robin Williams' character. The building blocks is doing long division without a calculator.
Excellent. All right.
Boom.
Well, I'll tell Sirius about this. He'll probably be very upset. He might cry, but I could just look at him and say, you're fake. You don't exist. Hope won. It sounds like you resonate a lot more with Hope. And, I want to wrap this up. I don't want to open up another can of worms, but, you've seen our pilot episode. So do you feel like you associate more with Sirius or Hope?
Absolutely Sirius, because Sirius is an optimist, and Sirius sees the good in the world. The difference between Sirius and I is that I don't think Sirius is human. But that's okay, because he can bring joy and goodness to the human-made world. But he is AI. Hope, I think, doesn't see hope for the future. I see hope for the future, right? Therefore, I am Sirius. Does Hope think she's human? Have we gotten to that episode yet?
No,
spoilers?
She is very adamant that, she knows that they are just a conglomeration of algorithms and, mechanisms, but there's no, she does not believe that she has a soul. They've never actually used this specific language, but Hope knows very much exactly, like she would have agreed with everything that you have said in this call so far. Sirius would say, but I feel things. I must be human, because isn't that what humanity is just conviction that we are alive and we have a soul? And, Hope would be, no, you are a robot. Stop making stuff up.
Well, I could put on a burlap sack and roll around on the ground, but that doesn't make me a bag of potatoes now, does it?
Oh, yeah, I guess not. All right, well,
Except
Sean,
I guess they don't roll on their own. You'd have to have a human kick the bag.
Yeah.
All to reinforce my point.
Yeah. Well, you have any last closing remarks before I wrap us up?
Yeah, you should absolutely subscribe to the Sirius AI Patreon. John, drop that link verbally for us.
I just shoved it down into the comments, or the description, wherever this is going to be.
Nice.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Sean Themea. Just kidding, Sean Themea, for coming on to Seriously Caffeinated Season 2 to discuss humanity and its relationship with real-life artificial intelligence. And, The big goal here is to get Sirius AI, a Post-Apocalyptic Musical, picked up, because this is a conversation that more kids need to be having, because they're growing up, and before we know it, they're going to be adults, and they're not going to know what makes them special as human beings. So, anyway, my name is John, and thank you so much.